ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव। हरि ओम।
Thank you, Veeraji. May I now request Swamiji to say a few words and bless our spiritual quest. Over to you, Swamiji.
Hari Om, all of you, and pranams.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. So, some few questions were left in the last session. So now, I think we will just start with the remaining questions.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Thank you. This is Bhanumati. I will request Mrs. Lakshmi from the Sunday morning group to pose her question.
Humble pranams, Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
Even after long and sincere struggle, some vasanas seems to be hard to obliterate. Therefore, the experience of transcendental silence is only flashes occasionally. As has been indicated in the scriptures, that complete and firm abidance is the goal. So have a feeling that the knower and the gained knowledge stands unconnected. Hari Om, Swamiji.
Amma, in one of the places, Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, you know how much patience is necessary in spirituality. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, how much patience do you need to dry up an ocean with a small blade of grass? You dip that grass in the ocean, then, remove the water, again dip it, again remove. How much time do you need? Rather, how much patience do you need to dry up an ocean with a small blade of grass? That much patience is necessary in the path of spirituality. Bhagavan did not say that much time is necessary. Thank God. He said that much patience is necessary. So when you are with this kind of grit and single-pointedness and determination when you walk the path, Bhagavan's grace descends and then he dries up the entire ocean. So therefore this should be our attitude. So struggle will continue because this is the greatest achievement in life. So the joy of achievement comes only when you have struggled for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So therefore patiently we have to keep going. And moreover, you said that feeling guilty. That guilty feeling is a very good sign. The sign, see, just imagine, suppose you are happy with your spiritual progress. Then you will be your greatest enemy in your progress. The more and more we have this kind of feeling that no, my progress is not sufficient, I have to put forth more effort, this much is not enough. This feeling is indeed a sign that Bhagavan's grace is with you. It is said that a confused Socrates is better than a comfortable pig, it is said. So therefore that guilt feeling will continue. It will be there till the end, and it will keep on forcing you to exert more and more in this path.
Yes, Swamiji.
So these are all natural.
Okay. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you so much.
Next question is from Mr. Vaidyanathan, Sunday morning group.
Yes.
Hari Om Swamiji, Pranam.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
While on our spiritual journey, we are aware of having crossed different stages. However, how can we know if we are on the right path?
How do we know that we are on the right path in this path of spirituality?
Yeah.
The indication is there is more and more peace, there is more and more fulfillment, there is more and more causeless joy. You understand the meaning? Causeless joy. There is no particular cause, but you are cheerful.
Yeah.
Left to yourself, you are cheerful for no reason. Because Ananda is your Swarupa. So therefore, you don't need a reason to be happy.
Very correct.
So you find that you are contented left to yourself. You are peaceful. You are a sense of fulfillment is there. And also you feel a presence of the divine with you all the time. You feel that you are not alone. There is somebody who is beautifully taking care of you. So all these kinds of feelings come as we progress in the path of spirituality.
Yeah.
There is lesser and lesser disturbance of kama, krodha, etc. So disturbances are minimum. Complaining and grumblings are minimum.
Yeah.
So if these indications you can see in your life, then understand, know for sure that you are progressing in spirituality.
Thank you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Right. Hari Om, Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji. I think from the previous question answer, our FIR will also give an indication, the frequency and the interruption. Thank you. So the next question is from Mrs. Sundari, Sunday morning group. Amma, you are able to?
Yes, Bhanumati ma'am. Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
My question is, as I understand, masters emphasize on no fault finding and even caution that fault finding may delay the spiritual progress. Swamiji, how can I simply see the faults, lack of perfection as is, without compromising on the perfection in every work done by oneself and others? This is a part.
Yes. Amma, first of all, we have to understand the problem with fault finding. See, in this world, people are at different stages of evolution. Majority of the people are at the tamasic level. In fact, majority of the people are at animal and plant level only. That is a majority. Very rare few evolve to become human beings. Among human beings also, majority of them are at the tamasic level. Very few evolve at the rajasic level, and very rare few they evolve to the sattvic level. So this is the whole, it's a pyramid structure. So you will find in the society that majority of the people, you will find lot of faults in them. It is natural. Lot of imperfections in them. You will not find a refinement in their behavior, in the way in which they speak to others, in their actions, etc. That lack of refinement will naturally be present in them. So it is very easy to find a fault with others. But then if we understand this evolutionary structure, then we understand that lots and lots of births are necessary for a person to evolve and become, a realized person in the final stage. So a lot of chances are necessary, a lot of opportunities are necessary, a lot of experiences are necessary, and a lot of sufferings are also necessary. So when this is the case, so then we must have compassion and an attitude of forgiveness towards everyone. This is the best way of living life and handling others. Now, with respect to this fault, let us emphasize on performing our best than emphasizing on perfect action, because perfect action is impossible by anyone. With practice, our performance can be improved every time. So we can always give our best, but our best need not be perfect. There is always a scope to improve. So therefore, perfection is impossible. But we can always give our best. So if I have given my best, I have all the right to be peaceful with myself. I need not be perfect, but if I have given my best, then I have all the right to be peaceful. Now, as far as others are concerned, say somebody is doing something wrong. Now the question is, that wrong thing is disturbing my mind. So then how to handle this? You will have to find fault with that person because you have to correct that person. You have to tell that person that, see, this is the thing which is wrong. You have to correct yourself. You will have to tell that. But then when we do it, let us do it by not hurting the person. This is one thing which we have to keep in mind. So in Bhagavad Gita, the instruction given is Anudvegakaram Vakyam, Satyam, Priyam, Hitam. 4 things you have to keep in mind when you try to correct others. So our speech should be Anudvegakaram. Anudvegakaram means not disturbing the mind of others. The second is Satyam, truth. Whatever we speak, we must speak the truth. And the third one is Priyam. Priyam means it should be spoken in a way which is very sweet. So Anudvegakaram, Satyam, Priyam, and the fourth one is Hitam, that which is good for that person. So suppose we find some fault with that person and we want to correct that person. Let us first of all tell some 4 or 5 good things about that person. Let us praise that person, make that person really feel good. And then we say, see, all those things are fine. If you can make this correction also in your action, then it will be wonderful. So before finding fault with that person, tell some 4 or 5 good things about that person. Make that person feel very, very happy. Then that person will be open-minded also towards your suggestions, your corrections. That person will not take it badly. Otherwise, that person will say, whatever good things I do, this Amma never bothers about it. Only the negative things she keeps telling. So this kind of thing can be avoided. If we tell some good things, nice things, praise that person for whatever good things that person has done, and then make this corrective statement, and then again praise the person. So this way we can easily make corrections in others. Did I answer the question, Amma?
Yes, yes, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji. Another part of it is Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi, the embodiment of love, embraces both the wicked and the noble alike.
Yes.
How can one reach and enjoy this all-embracing state?
See, how was Mother able to do it so? Mother was able to do so because she did not see that imperfect person there. She saw Bhagavan himself there. So whether a person is noble or wicked, in the heart, who is there? Bhagavan alone is there. So according to Vedanta, everybody is none other than consciousness with a perishable BMI. So we are all consciousness. So when I know that I am consciousness with a perishable BMI, I start seeing others also as consciousness, as my own divine self. So externally they may have a lot of imperfection, they may be wicked, crooked, etc. But what am I seeing in them? I am seeing my own self in them. So helplessly I start loving everyone. So just like a mother loves her wicked child also, she helplessly loves her child because that child is hers. So that oneness is there. She sees herself in that child, though the child has all kinds of negativities and imperfections. Just like how a mother is able to love the child, in the same way, a person who has known one's own self is able to love everyone because that person knows that everyone is none other than my own self. So love is natural and spontaneous for Mahatmas.
Thank you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. So the next question is from Mr. Prabhakaran of Sunday Morning Group.
Yeah. Pranam Swamiji.
Pranam.
How can one get self-knowledge? Because it is the key to health, happiness, success, and the beginning of self-improvement.
In life, the law is whatever you choose, you get. This is the law. So Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita says, Devan devayejo yanti pitrun yanti pitravrataha bhutani yanti bhutejyaha mad bhakta yanti mamapi. Whatever you choose in life, Arjuna, you will get it. If you choose devatas, you will go to Devaloka. If you choose pitras, then you go to Pitraloka. Or if you choose bhutas, you go to Bhutaloka. So in life, everything depends on your choice. What do you choose? Kathopanishad also says the same thing. Nayam atma pravachanena labhyaha na medhaya na bahuna sutena yamaivesha vrunute tena labhyaha tasyesha atma vivrunute tanum. Swamiji said in Kathopanishad. This atma you don't get pravachana by listening to talks or giving talks. Na medhaya, not by high intelligence, lot of memory power. Na bahuna sutena, not by listening too much. You don't get this self by all this. Yamaivesha vrunute tena labhyaha. The one who chooses the self gets the self. So, how to get self-knowledge? You will have to choose it. Choosing means what? You will have to give this knowledge the highest priority in life. You will have to understand the importance of it and you will have to work hard for it. You will have to allocate time for it. You will have to allocate effort for it. So, highest priority, hard work, sincerity, that will definitely give you the self-knowledge. Did I answer, Prabhakaranji?
Thank you, Swamiji.
Right.
Yeah. So the next question is from Mr. Sunil Kumar, Sunday Morning Group.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
You can unmute your video so that you can, Swamiji can see the question, person who is asking the.
Yes.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om.
My question is, how long will the mind exist and when will the intuition, Jnana Chakshu, be activated? It is said that only through Jnana Chakshu one can realize the Supreme.
Yes. Now, first of all, we have to understand what this Jnana Chakshu is.
Yeah.
It is not some eye opening up here, like, the Lord Shiva's third eye or something. It is not an eye here. It is not a physical eye which gets opened. So, Jnana Chakshu has to be understood as an understanding. Jnana Chakshu is a knowledge. It is like a person who has studied electricity. He sees a wire and he sees a bulb burning. So what will his Jnana Chakshu say? He will say that this wire is not an ordinary wire, it's a live wire. He starts seeing electricity. Now see, that seeing is not with the physical eye, the seeing is with the knowledge of electricity. So that gives as though a special vision to you. A person who has not studied electricity, he will never see that electricity there. But a person who has studied electricity, for him that wire is not an ordinary wire, it is a live wire, it is a wire carrying electricity. Now all those things he is seeing with his Jnana Chakshu because he has studied electricity. In the same way, with this Jnana Chakshu, you gain a new understanding about yourself. So without this Jnana Chakshu, our understanding is that this physical body is me. But then after studying Vedanta, you gain a new understanding about yourself. And what is that understanding? I am not this body, I am basically consciousness. This is my real identity. So you develop a new knowledge about yourself, and accordingly your thoughts, words, actions, everything undergoes a tremendous transformation. Now you are talking about this mind existing. So once you come to know that you are pure consciousness with this Sat Chit Anand, that you have existence apart from this body will perish, but this consciousness will remain eternal. It is the nature of consciousness. When all this knowledge you gain, automatically you start experience a kind of peace and bliss within. So what happens to the mind? The mind starts silencing down. All the worries, anxieties, fears for Yogakshema, etc. Everything silences down. So naturally you attain a state of a quiet state of mind. You come to know that you are not the thoughts, you are the one who is observing the thoughts. The witnessing consciousness you are. So what happens to that mind? The mind automatically silences down. So manasam tu kim margane krute naiva manasam. This is what happens. Finally you come to know that this mind is only an illusory thought pattern. You are not this mind, you are nothing but pure consciousness. So this understanding is what is called as Jnana Chakshu. It is not some eye opening at the center of the eyebrow. It is a knowledge. It's an understanding about yourself. Any other questions, Sunilji?
Okay.
The next question is also from Sunil. No, sorry.
No.
The next question is from Mrs. Sujata, Monday Group. Sujata?
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om.
During our study of the scriptures, we always hear that a pot restricts the infinite space through boundaries of clay, or a walled room restricts the space in a certain manner. However, when the pot breaks or the walls fall apart, space simply merges with the unbound space around. Similarly, when a person dies, it is said that the gross body falls away. So, just as the pot breaks. So, if we take that analogy further, it follows that our consciousness merges into the unbound, omnipresent consciousness of the world. In such a situation, how can we explain that the Sukshma Sharira will take on a new body? Because if it is merged with the consciousness which is omnipresent, then its identity as a Sukshma Sharira has disappeared.
Yes. Amma, first of all, you have to understand that this example of space, we said that, when the pot breaks, the space merges with the total space, etc. Please understand, there is no merging of the space, because space was never divided in the first place.
Correct. Similarly, consciousness was never divided in the first place.
Never divided. So the question of merging doesn't happen there. Space was infinite, is infinite, will remain infinite, undivided. In the same way, consciousness will remain infinite. It was infinite, it is infinite, it will remain infinite. Now, as far as our body is concerned, now tell me, consciousness is in the body or body is in consciousness?
I guess both.
The truth is, body is in consciousness. Remember, who are you? You are infinite consciousness, and in that infinite consciousness, the mind is projecting a physical body, and you think you are in that body. It is only a wrong notion. Please understand this.
Right.
Because of your identification with the physical body, now you, the infinite consciousness, you think wrongly that you are packed up in this limited physical body. It is only a wrong notion. Now, every notion is a thought or not? Every notion is a thought. So, it is nothing but a thought in your mind. So, when physical body perishes, you remain infinite consciousness. Because that is a reality that nobody can change. So what happens is you keep on taking one physical body after another and you superimpose yourself to be packed up in that little body. It is all a wrong notion. So what happens when right knowledge descends upon you? This wrong notion goes away and then you come to know that you are infinite consciousness which has nothing to do with physical body.
Right.
So the wrong notion remains as long as knowledge doesn't descend.
Yeah, I kind of get that, but the question is that how can then that Sukshma Sharira take on another incarnation? That is my question.
It takes on depending upon the desires in it. For example, Sukshma Sharira is nothing but your thought bundle.
But it doesn't even exist, right? It's just an illusion.
It's an illusion, but it is real for you, no? It may be illusion from the highest standpoint, but as far as the Jiva standpoint is concerned, the thoughts are there. The physical body is there. From the highest standpoint, it may be an illusion, but in my present state of ignorance, that is the only reality. Please understand, it is as though real. It is actually speaking, it is unreal, but from my present level of ignorance, it is absolutely real. For example, can you say that your body is unreal? From your state of ignorance, this body is very much real. From the ultimate standpoint, it may be unreal. But what is my state now? My state is not that highest state. My state is the state of ignorance now. And at this state of ignorance, mind is real, body is real, all this, Punarapi Jannam, Punarapi Maranam is real. So therefore, I cannot live that knowledge because that is not my knowledge yet. I am at present at my low level. So therefore, I will have to accept the reality of the body, of the thoughts, of the confusions, everything I will have to accept.
Okay.
As the knowledge dawns, then a time comes when I come to know that body is unreal, thoughts, everything, they are all illusory. That is a higher state of knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
It was beautiful, Swamiji. Actually, we were all thinking the consciousness is inside body. Now we have to think differently that body is in the consciousness. I think it's a good thought for introspection.
No, 1 minute, one more thing. You just think of your dream experience.
Yeah.
In dream experience, what is the reality? Are you in the dream or dream is in you? The dream body is in you. You are that infinite substratum upon which the entire dream world is projected, and in that dream world you are running around with a dream body. Remember, it is also a projection of your mind. So you are that infinite existence upon which the body is projected, upon which the world is projected. Everything is just a projection upon the infinite you. This is the way we have to see. Yes.
Great. So just taking it forward, if we remember maths as a universal set and a subset, we were always with a subset. We were never thinking we are universal. I think that is what came out from this particular question. Thank you, Sujata, for the question and Swamiji for the answer. The next question, 2 questions are from Mrs. Meera. Just
Pranam.
Meera.
My first question is, as a student of Vedanta, while I understand that the various forms of the divine are different manifestations of the same divinity, I find it an issue to perceive the unity, given that their forms, the stories, the relations associated with them are quite different in the Puranas. I seem to associate also different relationships to them over a period of years, and I'm not able to view them all as the same. How can I practice seeing the unity?
Yes. Amma, see, the thing is, as long as you consider yourself to be this name and form, Nama Rupa, as long as you think this body is me, so long in every other entity you will see only the body.
Okay.
If you think you are the body, then you will think Rama is also the body, Krishna is also the body, the Ganapati is also body, and all these people are all nothing but bodies. Why? Because according to your understanding about yourself, you are the body. So when you give too much of importance to Nama Rupa, name and form, you start giving importance to the same Nama Rupa in others also. That is why you are stuck. So when you see Rama, you cannot say that no, Rama is not Krishna, Krishna is not Ganapati, Ganapati is not Hanuman. So you are stuck in that name and form, isn't it? Now, this is how we have been living for so many births, because nobody corrected us, nobody guided us. We were never given this right knowledge. So now what happens as you progress in Vedanta, your attention shifts from name and form to consciousness. So this is what happens. So slowly you start knowing yourself not as a Namarupa, but as consciousness. I am consciousness with a BMI. So what is given importance there? Consciousness is given importance. I am consciousness with BMI. So again and again, when you do this correction, now this is called as Jnana Tapas. Again and again, you are identifying yourself with consciousness and not with the BMI. So again and again, when you do this, slowly you gain a knowledge about yourself that I am basically consciousness. You have a reorientation with regard to your understanding about yourself. Now when you start seeing consciousness in you, what will you see in others?
Consciousness.
You start seeing the same consciousness. You helplessly see it because now your mind is trained to see consciousness. So now when you see Rama and Krishna, you don't see as individuals there. You say that Rama is none other than consciousness in me, that Krishna is none other than consciousness. So then what happens is all this, pluralistic vision, it disappears and there comes a vision of oneness. That basically we are all one. We are all. So where you have to start? You cannot start from outside. You have to start from yourself.
Myself.
That is Vedantic knowledge. Yes.
Yes.
Did I answer, Amma?
Yes, sir. Yes, Swamiji. Thank you. As a continuation to the previous question, I see that in the context of the massive challenges sustained by Hinduism and Hindus, what attitude and approach I should have as a student of Vedanta towards other religions. Though the understanding that all are paths to the same God is present, seeing the happenings in country like conversions and desecrations of idols and different news that we get to hear, I feel conflicted what attitude I should have and more importantly what I should teach my children.
So here Amma, now tell me, Bhagavan in the entire Bhagavad Gita, did he ever give any importance to Hindus, Muslims, Christians, etc.? Did he see mankind in these divisions? No.
No, sir.
You will always find that whether it is Bible, whether it is Quran, whether it is Bhagavad Gita or any scriptures, Bhagavan never mentions Hindu, Muslim, Christian, etc. But Bhagavan always divides people into two categories. One is virtuous people, the other is wicked people. This is how the division is made. One is adharmic people, the other is dharmic people. Good people, bad people. Virtues, vices. And now whom does Bhagavan love the most?
Virtuous.
The virtuous people. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami vevi. So every time Bhagavan makes this mention that be good, be virtuous, be righteous. In the entire 12th chapter you will find Bhagavan saying that these are the people whom I love the most. Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha. Those people who never hate others, those who are very friendly to others, very loving and compassionate to others, such people, I love them, Bhagavan says. So now, we should always live our life based on Bhagavan's teaching. When Bhagavan himself has never divided mankind as Hindus, Muslims and Christians, why should we divide people like that? So what is the expectation of Bhagavan from us? His expectation is we should be good people, virtuous people, and we should practice all noble virtues of life, isn't it? If this is what is Bhagavan's expectation from us, let us try to do that. Let us not divide mankind based on Hindu, Muslim and Christian. The moment you divide, then all these problems of conversion come. And when you read such news that, the people are trying to convert this from this religion to that religion, your mind will be disturbed. I tell you, wise people, they never divide mankind based on religion. Wise people. It is only the people who have narrow-minded understanding, only they divide mankind into all these kinds of religion. So this understanding we will have to develop. What is Bhagavan's expectation from us? Let us live according to that. All the religions unanimously say only one thing: be virtuous, be good, be noble, develop faith in God, develop devotion in God. This is what every religion is saying. So then why should I divide people based on religion? Now tell me one thing. Suppose there is a neighbor. Now do you want a crooked, wicked Hindu as your neighbor, or a noble person, a selfless person, a very cooperative person, a very loving person, but he is a Christian? Now whom do you want as your neighbor? A crooked, wicked Hindu or a good Christian?
A good Christian, Swamiji.
Yes. So what does it mean? Actually you love only goodness.
Yes.
It is not the religion which actually you love only goodness. So therefore, let us pay attention only to the goodness. Now see, Paritranaya Sadhunam. Bhagavan never said Paritranaya Hindunam. He never said it. What did he say? Sadhu. Now sadhu can be there in every religion. Bhagavan says, good people, virtuous people I protect. Please understand, Dharma Samsthapanarthaya doesn't mean Hindu Dharma Samsthapanarthaya. Now, these are all the wrong ways of, misinterpretation available in the society. Bhagavan says that to establish Dharma, I take birth again and again. Establishing Dharma doesn't mean establishing Hindu Dharma. Please understand this. Because in the world, peace and harmony can be there only when we have virtuous people, good people in the society, not Hindus. Please understand. There are crooked, wicked Hindus also, there are good Hindus also. There are good Muslims also, there are crooked, wicked Muslims also. So let us try to focus our attention upon good people in the society, and let us try to be virtuous rather than getting stuck in all these kinds of religion. Let us take the best from all religion. This is the thing which you have to teach your child. There are good things in Bible, take it. There are good things in Islam, take it. And finally, the end result should be, I must become a good person, a better person, a blessing for the society. This is the highest way of thinking, and we must correct it. So don't worry about conversion. There is a Lord who is taking care of all religions. So let me not bother about conversions and this and that. Let me not. It is not my responsibility. Bhagavan is there to take care of that. My responsibility is only one. Let me become a good person. That's all I have to do.
Sure, Swamiji. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hari Om.
Right. Hari Om. Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji. Yeah, that is a question which keeps coming to us. Should we be passive when we are seeing? And it answers very well. Your answer is really apt. Sometimes we feel even doing nothing is a crime, that we are indirectly responsible. So the perspective that we leave it everything to God, and if we are the person to do, anyway, God will direct us, I think.
And also let us remember, Christianity has come because of the will of God. Islam has come because of the will of God. Please understand this.
Yeah.
So everything happens by the will of God. There is some reason for which all these religions have come. So therefore, let us try to learn good things from this religion. This way we have to understand. You will be amazed, in that Bhakta Vijaya, there is a mention. It is said that some of the Muslim saints, they were none other than Hindu saints in their past birth.
Yeah.
You understand? So in the eyes of Lord, there is no religion at all. It is all this, narrow-minded people who are creating problems in the society.
Yeah. I think we have also heard one, Shivananda Swamiji, who told actually Christ and Krishna are both same. It's only by the local language that it has changed.
Yes,
so if you believe in one God, it is all same. So
correct.
So the next question is from Mr. Ramaya Gopalan. Mr. Ramaya. Yeah.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
I started performing regularly my Nitya Karmanushtanas since the age of 7, primarily because of upbringing. Joined Sinya Mission Study Group 10 years back to pursue my spiritual journey, and this has helped me immensely in quietening the mind and to be in the present more than before. I'm currently pursuing Saguna Upasana in my meditative effort. With this background, my questions are, I had the urge to visit temples earlier very often whenever I was confronted with problems, but this is steadily waning. Number 2, the process in pursuing upasanas is steadily getting under control, although the frequency, intensity, and recovery of fluctuations of mind do exist. I am approaching you to throw some light upon whether the above could be accepted as acceptable pointers towards spiritual journey progress. Hari Om.
See, as I told earlier, spiritual journey or spiritual progress has something to do with your state of mind. Now, you have mentioned that it has immensely helped me in quietening the mind and to remain in the present. So, if this is happening, so definitely it is a spiritual progress. Whether you are going to the temple or not, that need not be an indicator of spiritual progress. But quietening the mind, yes, it is definitely an indicator that spiritually progress is happening. In fact, you can ask this question to yourself, 10 years back how you were and now how you are. Can you see any difference?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So if there is a difference, then definitely it means that progress has happened.
The second part of the question, can I repeat?
Yes.
While I am continuing the process of meditative process of Saguna Upasana, my mind is getting under control, but the frequency, the intensity and recovery of fluctuations of mind do exist. So what is your guidance on that?
So this frequency is decreasing?
Yes.
Frequency, intensity and recovery time, FIR. You mean to say FIR, isn't it?
Yes, Swamiji.
Is that frequency, intensity and recovery time decreasing? It should decrease.
Yes, Swami.
So if it is decreasing, then definitely it is a what you call, it's a sign of spiritual progress. Your irritation levels are less, your agitations are less, the complaining and grumbling that nature has less. You are able to accept choiceless situation cheerfully, and you are able to see the hidden hand of God even in sufferings, in difficulties, in tragedies. So the mind is not fluctuating as before. I don't say that it never fluctuates. No, that won't happen suddenly. But you can see a lot of progress with regard to how you react to situations. There is more and more control over emotions. There is more and more decisions based on the spiritual thinking. That spiritual guidance, you are able to put it into practice in day-to-day living while making decisions in life. So if all these things are happening, then know for sure that we are progressing in this path.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji, for the answer. The next question is from Mrs. Sujata of Monday Group. Mrs. Sujata?
I have already asked my question. I have another question, but it is related somewhat to what I had said in the earlier, which is to say that when we start to get more and more spiritual muscles, so to speak, then we begin to start seeing everybody as part of consciousness. At least that is the aim. That the consciousness that I am, everybody is the same consciousness. Similarly, so as we continue to see beyond the form, that is true both of animate and inanimate objects. Everything is consciousness. And as we keep seeing beyond the actual form in front of us, we know the form is there, but we're seeing something different. We're transcending that form and seeing something different. It is true for both inanimate and animate objects. The goal is consciousness everywhere. Is that a correct understanding? That is what I wanted to know.
This is correct understanding, but you have to start with yourself. Please understand this.
Yes.
As long as you think yourself to the body, you can never be able to see others as consciousness.
I understand. Yes.
So first step is knowing oneself to be consciousness.
Correct.
Then the rest, everything will fall in place.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
A directive for seeing ourselves as consciousness. So, what could be the first step of maybe it was a tangible action to say that it is just the thoughts or the activity?
That question will be answered in the next question.
Okay.
Next question of Hari Govindan.
Okay, then the next question is Hari Govindan, sir. You can ask your question.
Mute.
Sorry, Pranam Swamiji.
Yes.
Mine is not a question, but a request, Swamiji. Could you just elaborate the verse Pratibodha Viditam Matam Amrdatvam hi vindade Atmana vindade Viryam Vidya vindade Amritam from Kenopanishad?
Yes. I hope you have heard that talk, Kenopanishad.
We have studied this text during our study group.
Okay, so you will find these talks in YouTube also. I have given some talks on Kenopanishad. Please listen to that.
Okay, I will listen to that.
And anyway, here I will just briefly mention what it is.
Please.
But elaborately, you will find explanations there.
Okay.
The practical tips, etc. So what has to be done is Pratibodha Viditam equal to Matam. Matam means knowledge. Pratibodha, every bodha here means thought. Pratibodha means every thought. So here the Upanishad is giving us a technique to dive into consciousness. So Pratibodha Viditam, in every thought this consciousness is known. That is what he said. How is it known? So at the seat of meditation, when you close your eyes and sit, you will find thoughts coming and going, isn't it? So when thoughts are coming one after other, what you have to do, you don't have to suppress those thoughts. What you have to do is just start witnessing those thoughts. So as you are watching those thoughts, shift your attention from the thoughts to the witness of the thoughts. So there is an awareness center in you which is aware of the thoughts, which is conscious of the thoughts, which is witnessing the thoughts. So instead of getting carried away by the thoughts and the contents of the thoughts, generally this is what happens to us, because the thoughts are nothing but worldly thoughts. And if you are attached to these worldly things, beings and situations, then you will be carried away by the thoughts. So instead of doing this mistake, let the thoughts come and go, but your attention, let it be rooted upon consciousness which is observing the thoughts. So this is the kind of practice you have to do at the seat of meditation. So there are two things. One is consciousness. The other is thoughts appearing in consciousness. Two things are there. So now you have a choice whether to get rooted in consciousness or to get carried away by the thoughts.
Okay.
Either of these two will happen. Till now, a person who has no knowledge, he will be carried away by the thoughts, by the contents of the thoughts, by raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, etc. He will be carried away. So there you are giving importance to the thoughts. The moment you give importance to thoughts, thoughts will multiply and you will start getting carried away by the thoughts. In fact, your entire mind will be filled with worldly thoughts. But here now what are we supposed to do? You are not giving any attention to the contents of the thoughts. You are just watching the thoughts. So the law of this universe is, when you start witnessing the thoughts die. When you start identifying with the thoughts multiply. This is the law.
Okay.
So when you start observing these thoughts, just watching the thoughts, remaining firmly rooted in consciousness, knowing very well that this consciousness alone is a reality and that is my nature. These thoughts are nothing but, superficial fluctuations like the waves. Deep down it is only water. So in the same way, you get rooted yourself in consciousness, and then slowly you will come to know, number one, that these thoughts are illusory. And number two, as you get rooted in consciousness, the thoughts also starts disappearing. This is what Ramana Maharshi said, Manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam. When you start inquiring into the nature of the thoughts, you come to know that these thoughts don't exist at all. So therefore the mind also don't exist. Then finally what remains is only pure consciousness. This state is called samadhi in the spiritual term, where you are firmly rooted in pure consciousness, and in that consciousness there are no thought ripples to disturb you.
Swamiji, how do you link this with whatever you have told me now? How do you link with the next one? Atmana vindyate viryam. How do you link with this?
Atmana vindate viryam. Now you come to know that this is Atma. This consciousness is me. So what happens is, the moment the mind becomes completely silent, because you are watching the mind, you are witnessing the mind, and the moment you witness the mind, the thoughts completely disappear. Bhava shunya sat bhava susthiti, Ramana Maharshi says. It is bhava shunya, absence of, totally absent of all kinds of thoughts. Then what remains is reality. And what is that reality? Consciousness. And what is that consciousness? That is nothing but Atma. Now this Atmana vindate viryam. Viryam means strength. Now you come to know, Arey, I am not this BMI at all. So wrong notion gone, because wrong notion is nothing but thoughts. All thoughts gone, so wrong notion gone. Egoistic notion gone. I am this body, that feeling gone. Now what are you? You are pure consciousness. What is the nature of consciousness? It is Sat Chit Anand. Sat means eternally existent, eternally immortal. Chit Anand, you are blissful. So now you come to know that in this world nobody can question your existence. You are eternally existence, never dying, never decaying entity, all perfect, all blissful entity. So Atmana, with this self-knowledge, what happens? Vindate viryam. Viryam means strength. So now you become absolutely fearless.
Okay. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.
Thank you, Swamiji. It answers my question also. Yeah, the next question is from Mrs. Meera, Sunday Evening Group.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari
What is the best prashchitta for hurting others with words and actions?
The best prashchitta is when Bhagavan forgives you. See, you will always find that whenever you hurt others with your words and actions, you are the first person to get hurt. Suppose knowingly or unknowingly you use some harsh words against someone, against your parents or in-laws or etc. Then you will find that when you look within, your mind is disturbed. That disturbance of the mind has to be understood as that Bhagavan is not pleased with you. So whenever we use harsh words against someone, what happens is mind is disturbed. So how should you understand the disturbance of mind? My Creator, my God is not pleased with this action of mine, with these words of mine. So that disturbance is an indication from the Lord that Bhagavan is not pleased with us. So now what is the solution? So you have hurt someone. So what you have to do is just go to that person, touch the feet of that person, say, I'm really sorry. In that heat of the moment I told something, please forgive me. So seek forgiveness, confess that you have made a mistake, and also say that in the future also I will try my best not to do this, but since it's very difficult to change our nature all of a sudden, but I will try my best. So with all these pleasing sweet words, we must try to win the heart of others. Then other person will say, it's okay, no problem, etc., etc. Then you will find that your mind also becomes light. That guilt feeling, that pain, everything disappears. So that you have to understand as now Bhagavan has forgiven you. So when Bhagavan forgives you, then you understand that your prayaschitta karma has been, done. So that that mind has to come back to that cheerful state. So then understand that prayaschitta karma has been done.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Swamiji. The next is on belief and spirituality by Mr. Vishwas.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Thursday group.
Hari Om.
How should seekers place astrology and superstition in their life? We are still conscious of these factors like Rahu Kalam, auspicious time, bad time, sometimes bad omens, etc. So how should seekers consider these factors in their life?
See, the best way and the simplest way of dealing with any inauspicious time like Rahu Kalam, etc. is just chant the name of the Lord. Chant the name of the Lord, and then even the most inauspicious time becomes the most auspicious time. This is the easiest way. You don't have to consult any astrologer. If you want, you can test it also. Choose one Rahu Kalam and start doing some noble work by chanting the name of the Lord as a test. Suppose you want to go to some destination. Choose Rahu Kalam and say that I will chant Bhagavan's name throughout my travel time. You will be amazed by the results. In fact, this Indiranagar temple, our temple Indiranagar, Dinabandhu Devasthanam, it was consecrated by Pujya Gurudev during Rahu Kalam only.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether you are aware of it.
No.
Because Gurudev did not have any other time. He was very busy. He had to go somewhere else. The time when he reached there was a Rahu Kalam. So all these astrologers, etc. said, Swamiji, this is Rahu Kalam. So Swamiji said, no problem. If you chant Bhagavan's name, every Kalam will be Shubha Kalam only. There is nothing called. Now see, Chinmaya Mission Temple in the Indiranagar is one of the most active centers in Chinmaya Mission throughout the world.
True.
So that is the greatest, proof that Bhagavan's name is the most powerful.
Most powerful. Okay.
But we must have this faith. The most important thing, we must have this faith.
True. Right. True. Thank you, Swamiji.
Right.
That is true, Swamiji. So the next is under surrender unto him. Is written as Amma. Amini is asking the question.
Yeah. Amma, yes.
Thank you.
Hari Om, Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
I would like to have a clarification on free will. I just got some thoughts and want to know whether I go into the right direction. Gurudev said, man alone is given the freedom to act as he likes, and to the extent he disobeys the universal law of sacrifice, to that extent he suffers. Do we human beings really have a free will? That is my question. As long as we identify with BMI, we have a delusion of free will because of the ignorance about our real self, our real nature. We are born into certain circumstances due to the accumulated vasanas, and our actions are governed by these tendencies, not only individual vasanas, also total vasanas, and the influence of the predominant gunas. So here comes the question whether I go wrongly. Predominantly tamasic. These people have impulsive actions. Discriminate intellect is dormant. No question of free will, according to me. And predominantly rajasic. Sorry, I made a typing mistake. They're rajasic. Calculated actions which require a discriminating intellect to decide what is beneficial, what not. There is some free will to decide which action is to be taken.
Yes.
The calculative intellect may turn into an intellect of reflection by unpleasant experiences and has the option to continue the path so far down, the path of prayer, or turn to the path of Shreya.
Yes.
At that juncture, there is a certain free will. Gurudev says, you get what you deserve, not what you desire. Predominantly sattvic person has followed a dharmic life. The mind is calm, relative pure, has surrendered to the Lord and feels guidance from within and acts accordingly. Anything is Lord's will. There is no need for free will.
Yes.
And the person who has realized its real nature, the truth, enjoys total freedom. There, the question of free will has no value. Actions are not willfully done. There is no ahankar involved. Is this understanding correct, Swamiji?
Yes, Amma, correct. See, as a person evolves, he comes to know that the ego is an illusion. When ego is an illusion, then what about the self-effort of the ego? That also has to be an illusion. So the question of free will doesn't arise when a person becomes really, the most evolved, enlightened. He comes to know that this concept of purushartha or free will itself is an illusion.
Yeah.
If put in another words, as a person becomes more and more sattvic, he naturally feels inspired to do the right thing, to do the good thing, to do the righteous thing. He is naturally inspired. So then he finds that this inspiration is coming from God alone. So who is actually doing? God alone is inspiring him to do, to think and to speak. So all this inspiration comes from God. So he comes to know that he is a mere instrument through whom Bhagavan is functioning. So this is true as far as the highest, most evolved person is concerned. He knows ego is an illusion. He knows self-effort of ego also is an illusion. Now comes that Rajasic state. So here there is something he likes to do, but there is something else which is right. So there is a difference now. As far as a Sattvic person is concerned, there is no difference because whatever is right, that alone he loves to do. So there is no problem for him. So just like an iron piece is automatically attracted to a magnet, a Sattvic person is automatically attracted in walking the righteous path. So there is no effort involved. But as far as a Rajasic person is concerned, effort is involved. Because there is something which he loves to do, but unfortunately there is something else which is right. That is where this concept of free will comes. That you have to put forth effort, struggle hard to correct yourself from the wrong and walk the right path. Rightly said, as you have said it. And as far as a Tamasic person is concerned, he again doesn't understand what is free will because he's completely just like animals. They are pre-programmed. They have no freedom at all. So there is absolute lack of freedom as far as choice is concerned.
Yeah.
That understanding is perfectly right.
Thank you very much. I just wanted a clarification.
Yes.
Do we have any more questions, Banamaditi? I think is that the last one?
That was the last, listed question.
Okay.
But yeah, if anybody has any additional question, we can take maybe 5 minutes, Swamiji, so that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Based on our discussion, somebody may have got a question. Some 5 minutes we can take, and then we can go to the.
Yeah, we had some idea. Otherwise, no, if no questions come, what we can ask Swamiji.
Yeah.
Looks like there are no more questions. So let us now move on to a question which is common for all of us from the personalized ones. Swamiji, could you please give us some hints on why do we face impediments in our spiritual sadhana and how do we overcome these?
See, if the answer has to be short, the only reason, the only cause which prevents us from gaining our spiritual goal is our ego. It is our ego. So if there is one sadhana which has to be done again and again, which can ensure our smooth spiritual progress, that one sadhana is puncturing the ego again and again. Let me understand that I am a nobody. So always remembering these 4 statements will be of great help. O Lord, I am nothing. I know nothing. I have nothing. I can do nothing. This, if we can again and again remember, our sadhana will take a, what you call, it will speed up faster. You will always find that the moment the ego is there, it becomes very difficult for us to forgive others. The moment the ego is there, it becomes very difficult to confess our mistakes, our shortcomings. And the moment the ego is there, we are not able to see goodness in others. So all vices in us, it is only because of the ego in us. So now and then, take a look within and puncture this ego, then you will find that sadhana becomes very easy. We are, the egoless mind is a very flexible mind. An egoistic mind is a very, very stubborn mind. So we are able to understand the higher, we are able to get the guidance from the higher. All these are possible when the heart is free from ego. So this is the one thing to be done. As much as possible, let us remain humble. That is why the first value given in Bhagavad Gita is amanitvam. Amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, rajam. All the values come later, but the first value which Bhagavan emphasizes for gaining knowledge is amanitvam. Amanitvam means egolessness. So if we can do this, then we'll find the progress in spirituality becoming very smooth and very effortless.
Essentially, it zeroes down to unconditional surrender to the Lord. Am I right?
Yes, 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 yes.
Any more questions? So that was indeed good enough for our contemplation, Swamiji. Thank you. With that, we have come to the last part of the satsang, and I request Shri Vikas to deliver the vote of thanks. Vikas ji.
Hari Om Swamiji. It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for this memorable occasion of Q&A satsang with Swami Aparajitananda ji. Let me start by prostrating and thanking the Lord for making the 2 sessions of satsang an enriching one. At the outset, on behalf of all members of Indiranagar Study Group, our sincere gratitude and heartfelt thanks to Swamiji for raising and patiently responding to our questions. Swamiji, you have articulated your responses and made us understand this subtle subject better. Your answers were simple to understand and easy to contemplate upon. Thank you, and we look forward to many more such sessions with you, Swamiji. Our sincere thanks to Mrs. Amini Krishnan Madam for taking the initiative in organizing this online program. She was instrumental in forming the agenda and also guiding us all for the smooth conduct of the program. Our deep sense of appreciation to Mrs. Sundari Vivekanandan, who was a virtual coordinator in collating these questions and segmenting them and sequencing them. It was indeed a meticulous job. Our thanks to Mr. Harigovindan for opening the remarks, opening the session and setting the stage for smooth conduct of the program. I would also like to extend our thanks to Mrs. Bhanumati for stage managing the event. Our thanks to Mr. Sunil Kumar and team who have helped us in setting up the program on Google Meet. They were instrumental in recording and distribution of the program. Last but not the least, thanks to all members who attended the satsang and to all members who came with intriguing queries, practical doubts on various topics to which Swamiji has responded and encouraged us in our spiritual journey. Thanks to one and all, and Hari Om.
Thank you, Vikasji, for those beautiful words.
Thank you.
In conclusion, may I request Srimati Jayashree to chant the concluding prayers?
Hari Om. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
I now request Shri Sunil to recite the Chinmaya mission pledge.
Hari Om, sir. We stand as one family, bound to each other with love and respect. We serve as an army, courageous and disciplined, ever ready to fight against all low tendencies and false values within and without us. Will live honestly, the noble life of sacrifice and service, producing more than what we consume and giving more than what we take. We seek the Lord's grace to keep us on the path of virtue, courage and wisdom. May thy grace and blessings flow through us to the world around us. We believe that the service of our country is the service of the Lord of Lords, and devotion to the people is the devotion to the Supreme Self. We know our responsibilities, give us the ability and courage to fulfill them. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Sunilji.
Thank you, sir.
I must say it has been a spiritually enriching and rewarding experience, Swamiji, for us. And we hope to have more such interactive sessions in the days to come. On that hopeful note, let us conclude this session of Satsang with Pujya Swami Aparajitananda. Hari Om.